everybody. Welcome to the fourth day today, the session on advanced architecting on AWS. We got a good number of people here. We are about 14 minutes past the scheduled time. Let's get started in the interest of time. So let's start with the agenda. What are we going to discuss today? And as always, I'm going to make notes. Before I start, I just want to make sure that my audio is clear and you're able to see the screen as well. So I've just shared my screen. Okay. What are we going to do today? We will do a deep dive on IAM, Identity and Access Management. Specifically, what's more important for the exam is the cross account access. And then we'll do certain labs on this where we'll have multiple subscriptions, subscription A as well as a subscription B. We will create IAM accounts here, and on subscription B we'll create certain resources and see how we can then access resources from A to B and vice versa. Then we'll look at billing section as to how you can set up billing alerts and manage your billing using Cloud Watch. Tagging is an important aspect, so we'll look at tagging to understand how you can tag and how you can manage your resources using Tag Editor. Resource groups, where you can manage the resources using resource groups. You can also do certain automation right there within the resource group section, and that is done with the help of another service offering called as Systems Manager. Then to end with, we'll understand the concepts of migrating your workloads to AWS. That could be lift and shift for security or lift and shift for cost effectiveness and ease of management, and also lift and shift for performance. We also have to talk about certain processes because migration is not just technical thing. There are certain processes that are involved. As you know, that every activity needs three things, which I usually mark it down as people, processes, and technology. We need three things, and migration is no different. It's a phase-wise process, and we'll discuss about various phases of it. And how do you ensure that migration of your workloads is done with minimal downtime? I cannot say no downtime, although the cloud providers may say that there is no downtime there, but there is definitely a cutoff period during which certain, or at least certain seconds of downtime is certain seen in the um, in the real application behavior. There is another item that I would like to bring to the board, which is cloud formation, is how you can automatically build infrastructure with the help of JSON or YAML. How do you write JSON or how do you write YAML? And AWS has a very intuitive tool to build resources. When I say resources, it could be just anything like a VPC or an EC2 instance or load balancers, etc. So the entire infrastructure can be built with the help of a code. Hence, it is also called as infrastructure as a code. We'll understand that as well. To start with, let's go ahead and look at IAM. I'm currently in the AWS console. In the search box, I will type IAM. And then it just takes me to the IAM console. We just saw a gist of it on day one when I was creating user accounts for everybody. This is a console where you can create user accounts for your employees or your engineers that you may want to create accounts for. And this is a section where you create user accounts. User accounts are added to the groups. Groups will then have policies attached to it. In this particular lab, I created user accounts for everybody and then attached a policy called as administrator's policy, which will be visible in the permission section, right? Administrator account is the highest level of privilege that one may have. Apart from that, there are a whole lot of policies that can be attached, and there are inbuilt policies that Amazon has, and you can create your own policy as well. It is one of the best practices that organizations follow to add users to a group instead of attaching a policy directly to a user. Policies can be directly attached to the users. Amazon does not have such restrictions, but it's always recommended to go and follow a certain procedure. And the procedure is to add user to a group, and that group will then have policies attached. When I click on dashboard, you will see that there is an IAM users link. And this is something that we got to give to our engineers to log into the AWS to perform activities and actions on resources. This link can also be customized by clicking on the customize button, where I can put the company name here. For example, your company name like that. And this will appear more pleasing to the employees as well. So users have to log in using this link. Remember that this name that you use must be unique. Nobody else in the world must have used it. Users by default log in with a user ID and a password. But organizations also have a multi-factor authentication attached to it. What is MFA? In this case, the root account that I'm logged in with does not have MFA set up. MFA is multi-factor authentication. That means you will have multiple factors of authentication. So what is MFA? MFA is of multiple kinds. As on today, there are 5 factors of authentication. The first one is something that we know or something that we remember. And the examples are passwords or code. Your ATM PIN also falls under something that we know, and it has been used for a very long time. In combination to that, we also use something that we have. For example, RSA tokens that we carry, or organizations are now moving towards soft tokens. Third one is something that we are, which is biometrics. Biometrics is bio plus metrics, which is measurement of your biological traits. For example, fingerprint, retina, eye scan, etc. These are examples of biometrics. Then the fourth category is somewhere we are, which is based on your geographical location. Based on your geographical location, you may get authenticated or you may not get authenticated if that country or the region has disallowed access to it. And the last one, the fifth one, is something that we do, and it could be gestures, hand movements, etc. As on today, Amazon Web Services has the first 2 combinations set up. So that means we can integrate an RSA token or a soft token like a Google Authenticator, Facebook Authenticator, or any soft token based mechanism to AWS. We can use an application called as Google Authenticator to integrate our authentication with it. So we not only use user ID and password, but also um, a code that appears on this app called Google Authenticator. I'll go back, switch back to the AWS console, and show how we can integrate MFA with a hard token like an RSA or a soft token like Google Authenticator. And remember that this can not only be done for a root account, but also for individual users. For the root account, you need to go to the dashboard of the IAM console, click on Manage MFA, and then continue with security credentials on the pop-up, and then there's an option to activate the MFA. Now there are multiple options like virtual MFA, U2F security key, which is a device, and any other hardware token you may have like RSA or Gemalto. I have installed Google Authenticator on my phone. Just in case if we or Google Authenticator is new to you, just show certain pictures of this, which can be installed on Android devices or on Apple devices. If I click on images, well, once you have the barcode scanned, you will see the number popping up on your application, something like that. So what I'm going to do is quickly click on virtual MFA and then continue, and then I will see a barcode right on my screen. What I have to do is open the application on my phone and then scan it, and I'm doing it while I speak. So I open the application and then just scanned the barcode. And what I will see is that a couple of numbers start popping in, and I will carefully punch in those numbers and then wait for another number, which is this. Okay, and then assign the multi-factor authentication. Looks like my numbers were right, and I click on close. Now once I go back to the dashboard, the MFA part is in green. So next time I log in, it will not only ask for my user ID and password, but also the number or the MFA token which is ticking on my phone. So I'll sign into the console. It's taking a while. As you see, it is asking for an MFA because my root account is now tied up with Google Authenticator. Right? I clicked on submit. So my root account is now integrated with a Google Authenticator. Every time I sign out of AWS Management Console, I have to also open the Google Authenticator app on my phone. This can be done, like I said, not just for the root account, but also for the user or the regular user accounts. To do so, go to the dashboard, click on the user section, identify the user for whom you want to set up the MFA. It's taking some time today. I'll just click on one user in random, click on Deepak. And then under security credentials, there is an option to assign an MFA device. So I can click on manage, and then you will get similar options. I click on continue, scan the barcode, and get that set up for that user. This has to be done for individual users. There's also something called as an access key and a secret key, which is then used for programmatic access. Specifically, if you would like to um, develop certain applications using AWS SDK, write your own program using AWS PowerShell or AWS CLI to query the resources in your AWS subscription, you will need access key ID and a secret key. In order to create that, you can just click on this button and it will give you that access key and a secret key. Once I close this secret access key is no longer retrievable. You cannot retrieve it. So I'll just close it, and all I see is an access key, but not the secret key. If you ever think that your access key and secret key has been compromised, you can always make it inactive or delete it using the X button on the right hand side. I'll just show a demonstration as to how I made a PowerShell script to pull up the resources that I have in AWS. There are certain bugs in the PowerShell script that I wrote. It's nothing related with AWS. That's pretty stable, but there's a small error that I should be fixing, but I should still be able to demonstrate that. So I have a small script written here that is creating an Excel sheet and then communicating with my AWS using the access key and secret access key, which I have hard coded inside the script, and it is pulling information like that. So it gives me all the information which I need. For example, the number of instances that I have and their instance IDs, the region in which they are hosted, the number of S3 buckets I got in my subscription, and everything that you see in this list. Of course, this can be modified and you can add more content to it. So I'll click on it. I'll get certain errors, which I know why I'm getting it, but that's all right. So you see the Excel sheet popping up on the bottom right hand side. I'll open that up, and you see that it's automatically writing things on the Excel sheet. Like in EC2, you will see the list of S3 buckets, the number of load balancers I got, RDS, VPC. So it's like an inventory tool that you may want to write for yourself using AWS CLI or PowerShell, and it just writes everything one by one. So the script is still initializing. It will take a minute to populate everything because it's got to go through all the regions one by one. It's not querying just one region, but querying all the regions, because I've done for each loop here. Right? For each $region in all the regions, do something, and that activity is written right there. Okay? And this is an example of how you can use access key and secret key to write your own or query or run an API call on AWS. This is an example of PowerShell, but you can simulate it on Java, .NET, Ruby, or AWS CLI, or any such programming platform. Basically, access key and secret access key helps you run API calls to query, put and get and fetch information from AWS. So it has already started doing it. Looks like I've got 2 instances there so far. They are hosted in US East 1, which is Virginia. One of them is running. There's another one that's terminated. Their public IP addresses, etc. And you'll see more information slowly. There's always a need to have multiple subscriptions, or maybe have one subscription called as development account. Let's say there's one subscription that an organization has, which is purely for development purposes, and another separate subscription for production purposes. And this development subscription will have users as well who are managing the show on the development environment. Let's call that user Mark. Mark may also need access to the resources in production environment. Let's say there's an S3 bucket, but you don't want to create this user Mark again in production, because by doing so, Mark has to remember multiple passwords. And the password policies of each environment may also change. When I talk about password policies, I'm referring to complexities of the password which can be set up here. We don't want the employees to use their pet's name or mother's maiden name or something to make their life easier. Although life will be easier, but from the security standpoint, it's not good practice. So we will choose one of these, or maybe multiple options here, to make sure that the users are choosing a complex password. So if I go back here, the agenda is to make sure that the user in one subscription can access the resources in another subscription. So I would like to enable cross account or cross subscription access. It could be read access or it could be read write access, could be anything. So let's see how we can establish that. Before we get on to the screen and start um, doing things technically, let's make a note of things as to what we'll be doing in the lab. First, of course, I need to have two subscriptions. I've got one subscription with that name. There's another subscription as well that I made just for this lab. So let's say subscription A. We'll go ahead and create a user account called Mark, add him to a group called as a dev group, and then also make him an admin, right? So in the development environment, Mark is an admin. But in the production environment, I would like to make him an S3 admin, that's all. Or probably S3 read only so he can look at the buckets and see what's going on there. Then I'll move to subscription B and create that bucket, create the prod bucket. I will also create an IAM role in subscription B. Then attach a policy to it. What kind of policies? We'll take a look at that. Read or just read write or what is it? We'll understand that. In step 3, I'll go ahead and switch to subscription A and create a inline policy. It's not just a policy, but it's an inline policy, customer managed policies, so that I can allow and assume an S3 role in prod. Then I will attach this policy to the dev group. By attaching that policy, user Mark will also have that policy inherited or the permissions inherited. And finally, I will log in as Mark in subscription A. And by doing so, the user called Mark will have full access on subscription A because we made him an admin. But Mark can also switch roles. And when he switches roles, he will be asked or he will get a pop-up to type in the role name and the subscription which he has to type. So Mark tells the console that I want to get into subscription B with the following role, and he will then be given access to the S3 bucket which we created here in subscription B, and the policies that are attached will be applicable for Mark. So in subscription A, Mark will have certain permissions. In subscription B, Mark will have different permissions. This is called as cross-account access. Let's go ahead and do this. I'm currently logged into subscription A, and you can find that out by just looking at this name, which I've named it as Cert Global. I will also launch incognito mode or a private mode and log into another console using a different subscription. So this will be subscription A and this one will be subscription B. Please allow a minute while I authenticate and log in with a different subscription. Okay, so I'm logged in here and I can always switch back to the screens using Alt Tab, and there I am. This is my subscription A. And like I said in my notes, that first thing that I got to do is create a user called Mark and add him to a group called as dev. So let's do that quickly. As the users and add a user, and I will give him just the console access because I do not need to give him programmatic access for this demonstration. I will leave this unchecked because it's just me who's logging in. If it was somebody else, or if I'm creating this account for an actual employee, I will make sure that this is checked for complying to my best practices. I will also add this user to an admin group or a policy, which is called as admin access. I'll leave the tags at this time and click on review, create user, and step number 1 is done. Then I will switch back while this is creating. Let's not wait for it. I'll switch back to Alt Tab and go to the second account, which I'm saying it as production account. Quickly go to S3 and create a bucket. Make sure that this name is unique. So I'll say production app version 3 or something. And if somebody has created already, it'll give me a pop-up. Otherwise, it will move to the next screen. All right, looks like I'm lucky, so I'll keep moving there and create a bucket. So let's flip back to the notes here. Step number 1 is done. Step number 2, half of it done. And then I've got to create an IAM role there so that people have permissions, right? And this must be done in um, subscription B itself. So I'll go back. So there's a request in the chat for the PowerShell script, which I will put that in the drive at the end of it. I'm going to IAM. Just a minute. Looks like it is hung. So I'm just waiting. Okay. Looks like it's there. So I'm still in the production environment. This is, if you look at my name, let's just mark it as production. So I'm going to go to customer managed policies here and then create a policy. Then you will have two options there. One is if you would like to create a policy with a visual editor, or if you would like to just copy and paste a JSON. We'll prefer a JSON method here, and this is more specific. And then I already have a JSON written here in order to save the time, and right there. So this JSON is actually allowing access to the buckets. You can specify a specific resource there, but I'm allowing access to all the buckets using that wildcard. and it's gonna get the list of all the buckets and its geographical location. You have to specify the bucket name as well. And the actions that Mark can do is he can retrieve the objects, upload the objects, and then delete the objects if required. I'll copy that and then paste it here. Make sure that you specify the bucket name here. I will be uploading this JSON as well in the drive. But when you do this lab, make sure that you have the bucket name specified there. When you see something like that red, it means there is a problem. It means this isn't right. So I will correct these bucket names and then we'll see if that you still get the bad string. So we need to get the bucket name. I think it was production app v3. So production app v3. It is case sensitive, so make sure that you write it properly. S3. Okay. All right. So it still says that there is a problem. All right, this one. So usually what I do is validate this JSON using an external JSON editor. Looks like there's some grammar issue. There's an extra comma somewhere. So I will copy this and open a JSON validator. A lot of JSON validators out there on the internet, and we'll pick up on the first link and copy and paste it there, and then click on validate JSON. So it says that there is an additional comma. I'm going to remove this comma and validate the JSON one more time. Okay, now it is showing line 16 has an error. Let's see what exactly it is. Okay, there's a bracket that needs to be there like that. Validate JSON. Okay, it moved on. I think that's sorted out, and I'm going to remove this comma there. Okay, now it's a valid JSON. I'm going to take it back to my IAM, remove this whole thing, and paste it there like that. Okay, so now it is valid. Let's click on review policy. This guy will validate it one more time. If everything is correct, it will move on. Give it a policy name, a proper policy name like bucket hyphen access hyphen S3, and I'll also give mark, something like that. So that way I know that that is the policy name. Okay, and just put it there like that. Now I've given list access, read access, as well as write access to multiple resources in S3 bucket. All right, fair enough. Create that policy. Okay. All right, this policy is done. Let's go ahead and verify if it is there. There you go. It's right there. So what was our next step? Now we gotta go to the other subscription, which is my dev environment, I believe, right? And then as per our steps here, I have to create an inline policy that will assume this role in prod. I'm just going to quickly show you how do we do that. We go to the dashboard and customer managed policies. Just a minute, it's just getting stuck for me today. Internet isn't that great. Okay, I'm gonna add one more step here because after creating the policy, a role has to be created. Role has to be created, and then we need to attach that role, attach the policy to this role. So I'll switch back to my prod environment and then go to the policies and then create a policy there. Oh, so we just created a policy, so we have to create a role, not a policy. Yeah, we have to create a role and then attach it. When we create a role, we should make sure that we select another AWS account because the purpose here is to grant access to a different subscription. This is a prod environment and I want to give access to a dev environment. So, and the environment are different. So I'll click on another account and identify the dev environment's account ID and copy paste right here. So I'll switch back to my dev environment, identify the account ID, which is this 759, etc., which you can also find it on the dashboard here. So I will go ahead and copy this, edit it to remove or just copy what I want, and switch back, paste it there. We do not have to select MFA at this time or require external ID. Just click permissions. And then here, I will select the permissions that, or the policy that I just made. Where's my policy? Policy name was bucket access. Let's see. I don't find it. Or was it created in a different subscription? Oh, it's created here. So I think we have flipped here, probably missing few points. So I've got my policy here. So this is where I've got to create the role as well. I just want to make sure that the S3 bucket is also here. Yeah, so we made the S3 bucket here and the policy is also here. So I'll go and create a role and attach this policy to the role. Create a role, select another AWS account, identify the account ID of the destination. So we'll flip right there and cancel this because that's not what I need. Dashboard, users, click on just any user there. And I'm going to navigating to the user to identify the account ID or the subscription ID. Although there are several places where you can find it from. This is the account ID. And then paste it there. Next, permissions that I want to attach to this role is something that we just created. There you go, bucket access S3 mark. And then click on tags, review, and then give this role a name. Okay, we'll make a note of it and create role. And I will make a note of that role name as well. Okay, so this part is complete. I know we flipped multiple screens here, so I will take a step back and explain what we did by looking at the notes. We created a user account, added him to admin group, created a bucket, and then created a role as well, created a policy, attached the role to the policy. That's what we did. But then when you are creating a role, we made sure that you are creating a role to attach it to a different account, right? Any questions? Um, any questions, team? I know we flipped several screens here. There was some kind of confusion, but I hope that's sorted out.
Hi, Anand, Deepak here.
Hey, Deepak.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do we have any project, step-by-step project for AWS training? I'm asking because I mean, I have attended other training also on Azure, and we had some step-by-step project to perform. So, do we have any project for AWS as well?
When you say project, are you looking for lab documentation or something?
Yeah. For the learning purpose only.
Have you heard of this company called what's that company? There are a lot of step-by-step documentations, and they document it right there. The reason I don't have it is because I myself follow them or used to follow them. Um, mm, I'll just make a note of it on my notepad and I'll give it to you when it strikes my head. Uh, I'm writing it down here. Okay, I just made a note of it and I'll tell you the place where you have all the step-by-step documentation there.
Yeah, and those labs should cover all the designing architect purpose.
I'm not sure if they have it or not, but that's a place where mostly they keep all the lab documentation, and I cannot list down all of them because it's been a while I went to the website. So I don't know what they should have. So once we go there, we'll know what they have it.
Okay.
So, all right. So what we did is we created a user account, created user account in dev environment, and in the production environment we created certain policies. So that ways it will have access to the bucket as well. And then now I'm moving to a different console, which is now the dev environment. And here I have the user. I think I just created a user called Mark. Yeah, the user called Mark is here and he has the admin access, right? Now this is where I would like to have certain inline policies attached to the group. So I'll go to the groups and then see, well, this user is not attached to the group as well. So I have to create a group first. Developers, for example, developers, and then next step, make him an admin, add user to this group, add users. I can add users right from right here. Add permissions. I'm adding this group to this guy. Okay, so this user called as Mark is added to this group called as developers group. And what I got to do next is add an inline policy. There is no inline policy to show, so I will click on create new, select custom policy, and then select it. This is where I have to again pick up another JSON code, which is also somewhere on my desktop. All right, and I have to just copy and paste this. I'll explain what this is doing. So here I'm allowing access. Remember that this is a dev account, so I'm allowing access to a production account. So it really does not understand that term, production-account. So I have to pick up the ID or the production account number or the subscription number. So I'll go back to my production account, which is right here, and then identify its number, which is this 7594, whatever. I will copy and paste here. So that way I can take just what I want, go back here and paste it. And then the role name which was created in production must also be here. What was the role name? I think it's there in our notepad. We don't have to switch back to IAM. The role name was something like this. Cross account role access to S3 bucket. This was the name. So I'll switch back here and paste it. Okay. Is a way you can validate it. Let's see if it's right or not. Looks like I gotta give a name. So I'll say give it some name. Assume hyphen S3 hyphen role. You can just give any name, doesn't matter, to prod account. This is just for our understanding. And then apply the policy. So this user called as Mark is an admin in this account, but with the help of this role or an inline role, we have been able to grant access to a different subscription with the following subscription ID. And then he will have this set of permissions which are defined in this role. Does it make sense so far? Now, when this user logs in, this user called as Mark logs in to his subscription, he will have full access to his services, to all the services in AWS, right? But will have just read access or read write access to the S3 bucket. So I will sign out of this console and sign in as Mark. For that, I got to copy paste the URL that was there on the dashboard. I'm just waiting. Okay. Type Mark and his password. Right. So Mark has logged into the dev account and he will have full permissions to EC2 because he's an administrator here. He will have full permissions to the S3 bucket because he's an admin. So no one can stop Mark from building the infrastructure in AWS in this subscription. But Mark has to switch the roles, which he can do using just this button. And then there's an option called as switch role. You click on it and then he will be asked to type in the subscription for which he wants to get into and then the role as well. So I'll switch back to the production account right here, which is this is the production account, and then copy this thing, which is this part, and paste it here. The role name which he wants to assume is this because this role has all the permissions. So we'll copy that and paste it. And when I click on switch role, let's see what happens. The account alias cannot be resolved to a valid account. So, okay, probably I missed an S7 here. Yeah, let's see now. Now, as you see on the top right hand side, it clearly says that it is a cross account role to S3 bucket on the following subscription. But here he's trying to get into EC2 and he does not have any access on EC2. He has just S3 access, and hence you're getting access denied. You're not authorized to describe anything, right? So let's switch to S3 to see if he's able to see the production bucket in that account. We created a bucket called as prod app v3 or something, which should be visible here. There you go. So this user called as Mark has access to another subscription. He can upload files, he can play around because he has a different set of permissions which are defined in the following JSON. So this is how you can grant access to users on a different subscription or on multiple subscription as well, and it is all governed and determined by what you write inside this JSON. Is this lab activity clear? Was there a confusion because we switched too many screens? Would you like me to show this one more time?
Can you go back to the console and just talk through the different, you have the roles, you have the policies, you have the groups, and just kind of describe how the two interact together, or how each piece works. So, because each one of those is kind of a segment of permissions, right? And
Right.
so start at the very top and you have the groups, you have the policies, and you attach, there's policy that can be attached to the user or to the group, and just kind of walk through the logical progression there.
Yeah, sure. So what we first thing that we usually do is create groups. For example, S3 admins or probably EC2 and S3 admins. We can also create a group called as billing admins, where the finance team is added to the billing admins group, or probably billing read only, where they can just read but they cannot modify anything. Another group for, let's say, NOC, Network Operations Center, who will just be responsible for monitoring. So they will have access to CloudWatch, right? A compliance team maybe have a compliance group. So we create groups like that. And then you attach respective policies. This is the heart of any IAM. The policies are either created by Amazon or created by you. There are both of them that are available. Amazon has a whole lot of policies created, but you can of course create things by yourself. So if you want to give full set of permissions to this group, you will attach a policy which is EC2 full access or S3 full access to this group, and then add users called Steve, Joe, etc. to the groups. The users are added to the groups, policies are attached to the groups. The users are getting these policies because they are attached to the groups like that. I will switch back to this console. In fact, I'll close this and go to this section and create a group first. Let's call this group finance group because I would like to have just billing permissions. When I click on next, I see the whole list of policies that Amazon has, and then I can just find policies related to billing. When I click on it, I can just I will have this policy attached to the group called as finance, and then click next and create group. I think someone played the video. This is yesterday's video. Can we please mute yourself? Hello? I heard a video being played, so I'm not sure if everybody heard it. So just okay. So what I did is created a group called as finance, and then to this group, I've got certain policies attached, which is specifically billing, so that the users that are there in this group called as finance can just see billing. Now let's see what's inside this billing. You will see a policy attached. If you click on it, you will see that there's a JSON policy attached to this policy called as billing. Now, what exactly is it? This policy is letting the users or allowing the users access to the billing console, can see the usage, can see the payment methods and everything inside it. I'm saying everything because there's a star right here. Star is a wildcard. And this wildcard means that this user who is added to this group and has that policy attached can see everything with respect to the following options available inside the billing, right? This is of course customizable. You can modify this, you can detach it, you can add new policies there. There are no users added to this group, so I'll go to the user section and create a user right now and call him Joe. Give him management access, AWS console access at this time. Let us give it a password as well and click permissions. Under permissions section, I can identify the group like this. Now there are three ways in which you can give permissions to this user. Number one, by adding him to a group or copying the permissions from a user or attaching the policies directly. The best practice is always to add a user to a group. So I'm adding the user called as Joe to this group called as finance, and then just finishing that. All right. So this next time when this user logs in using this URL, he or she will then be able to see just the billing related information. Let me quickly show that to you as well. Okay, this signed in with my cookies, so I will sign out and sign into the console. Sign in. This should have logged me in with. Okay. So log in with Joe and type the password like that. So when Joe, who is a finance administrator, tries to play around with other services, he will just get access denied. Right? He just does not have access. But he has to then go to billing specific information where he has full access granted because the policies that are attached to the group. Now, I got an error here. If you are an AWS administrator, you can provide permissions. You know what? Something went wrong here. Let me log in. Let me fix this. It's just the cookies that is messing up with these things. Okay, so I've created this user called as Joe, and as you saw, I gave him billing permissions via the policies. I'm gonna copy this and open an in private mode to log in with that user called Joe. Okay, now I go to billing. He should have full access to the billing. But if he flips and tries to play around, oh, this is not good. You don't have permissions to access billing. I just gave him permission to billing. 759455766. Yeah. Wow. I will close the browser and open it again. I'm sure it is the cookies that's messing up. Technically we are right, but I should have cleared the cookies as well, but I'll try it. So it's definitely the cookie because it's still signing it within a cross account role, which is not good. So it is definitely the cookies which is messing up this lab. See? Just trying to use a different browser. Amod, are you getting an error that there's a problem with the audio? Can everybody hear me? Is it a problem with the audio on the GoToMeeting side, or um, can any of us hear me, or is it just Amod? Okay, okay, thank you. I'm just trying to fix an issue with the cookies here. So the problem is that when I give permissions to Joe to the billing, and when I log in with Joe with this custom link, he still gets an error that it has no access to the billing, which isn't right because he has full permissions right here on billing. So I'm just trying to launch it using a different browser. I've launched IE. Let's see how that goes. Okay, so this is IE, and I'll now go to the billing dashboard. And if I still get the error, then it's something to do with the IAM. Yeah, you don't have permissions, which is not good. Which is not good. As you clearly see that the permissions are granted. Let's try another use case here. I'll create another user called Mark or something. Yeah, and give him EC2 access this time. Okay. We'll use a custom password. So I'll just add him to, yeah, I'll just add him to a finance group again, but I'll remove I'll remove the billing policy, and I'll attach an EC2 policy to this. Okay. So this user called as Mark is added to a group called finance, as we just saw. And I will detach this billing policy from here, and I will attach probably EC2 full access to him, because Mark belongs to infrastructure team. So when Mark logs in, he should be able to create instances and play around with that. So I'll copy this again, sign out from this console, and log in with Mark this time. Yeah. And because I have attached EC2 policies to this user called Mark, it should be getting full view access of EC2. Yeah, it should get full view access of EC2. So I'll go to EC2 from here. Okay, EC2. There you go. He has full access to EC2, so he can launch an instance and play around with this. He does not have access denied or something like that. So he's able to create the instance. But if Mark tries to play with S3, he should get access denied there. He should not be able to create any buckets or do anything inside. Yeah. So let's see if Mark can create a bucket. No, he's not able to pull any information out of this. So let's see if he can create a bucket. Say next. So he gets access denied. So the problem that we saw earlier was purely related with the cookies on my machine. So after using a different browser, it's working properly. So what we just did is created a user account called Mark, added him to a group, and that group had permissions or policies attached to him. And when this user called Mark logs in, he gets just that set of permissions. Is it clear so far? I think Paul asked this question, right? Paul, is this clear so far? Okay, so I just unmuted you, Mark.
Okay, yes, it's clear.
Okay, so I will also show you other options that you have inside IAM. We just looked at the account settings like this. This is primarily used to create a password complexity so that we are compliant towards various regulations we have. You can also integrate with on-premise Active Directory by clicking on Create Provider, then select whether you want a SAML provider or if you're looking for an OpenID provider. So on your premise, you will have either a SAML provisioning or an OpenID. SAML stands for Secure Assertion Markup Language, which is usually written in XML format, and then you will publish it on your premise, and that link will, or the XML file then will be shown here. But if you have an OpenID connect on your premise, you have to then provide the URL which is there on your premise. By doing so, you will have your on-premise directory integrated with IAM. You can also pull up a credential report here to see what people are actually doing on your enterprise. Not doing, but do they have complex passwords, or when did they log in? What was their last timestamp, etc., and all such details like this, which the auditing team or the compliance team usually needs. Does this user have a password? When was the user account created? When was the password last set? And several other attributes of that user will then be visible here in this report, which is very good for the audit team. So we don't have to do much, just click on download report and it does that for you. Thank you. So we looked at users, groups, roles, and policies. Policies are predefined. You can also create a policy yourself. These are custom policies. Now, when you click on create policy, you have two options. One, either you can use a visual editor, so you can choose a service as to how you want to grant access, or it's easier to write a JSON. By writing a JSON, you have more granular control like that. So in the previous lab, when we were doing cross-account provisioning, we gave permissions like this, where we allowed permission on S3 bucket, the following S3 bucket. And then we said, hey, we want to grant permission to allow so that the user account that has this policy attached can retrieve the objects, upload the objects, as well as delete the objects from the following bucket, which is listed here, right? So we are granting permissions like that. But if you don't like to do it this way, you of course can do it like this. Say S3, I want to grant permission on S3. The kind of actions that I want to take, like list, read, write permissions, and then you can grant permissions to a specific S3 bucket or all the resources. If you say all the resources, it's just like star or a wildcard. But you can also say specific and add the ARN of that S3 bucket. You just got to put the S3 bucket name here, right? Then you can go to granular level and say, I want to give access to a particular object inside this bucket. And if you would like to have any specific conditions like MFA or accessing from a specific source IP. So this is a graphical presentation, but it can also be done through a JSON like how we did it in the lab. Of course, if you go through the visual editor, it also builds a JSON behind the scenes. I'm assuming that IAM and cross account access or cross subscription access is clear to you. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be happy to take a step back and do the whole lab again. The issues that we had with this, where permissions were granted and the user called Joe still did not have permissions, primarily because of the caching issues that we saw on Firefox. I should have cleared the cookies and then done the lab, but when we did it with an IE browser, we were able to demonstrate that successfully. But if this hodgepodge has actually created a confusion, please let me know.
Yep, pretty clear.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I suggest that you go ahead and do a lab for this today. Spend some time. As you know, it's not taking a long time here. Spend 1 or hour and a half to do the labs. And tomorrow, you'll definitely come back with questions. Sometimes it appears that it's all good, and sometimes it appears that there's a confusion. But then the actual problems will surface once you start doing the labs. And tomorrow, we can spend time on focusing on resolving those issues that you see individually. Thank you. There's another section within IAM, and it's a very important section which you're missing here. And that section is called as encryption keys. Yesterday, and even in other classes, we spoke about encryption a little bit, where we said that the data at rest must be encrypted, data in transit must be encrypted. So as information security professional, it's paramount that you protect the data at rest and protect the data in transit as well, right? And when we specifically talk about data, we're talking about three important things again. One is confidentiality of data. Second is integrity of data. And the third one is availability of data. It's very important to understand these terms, the differences between them. So what is confidentiality of data? In simple English or dictionary terms, confidentiality is if I tell something to you, you don't say the same thing or convey the information to somebody else. So confidentiality is when I send an email to you or send a document to you, you receive it. Nobody else receives it. If I send a FedEx to you or courier to you or parcel to you, you get it. Your neighbor should not get it, or there should not be anybody else who's getting it. This is confidentiality of data. So data is received by the intended recipient is confidentiality. Integrity is making sure that there is no modification of data. So if I'm telling something to you over phone, somebody taps it and conveys it to you in a different way, then the data is losing its integrity. If I'm sending a FedEx to you or parcel or courier to you, you get it. Yeah, you're getting it, but the parcel is open. The letter is read by somebody else and the letter is put inside in the box and you get it. Yeah, you get it, but the box is open. That clearly means that somebody else has seen it. So integrity of the data is also important. Well, by ensuring confidentiality, you are getting the data. By ensuring integrity of the data, you also are making sure that there is no man in the middle interference or no man in the middle attacks. Availability of data means that, as the name itself says, availability, it means that the data must be available at all times. So using mechanisms like load balancer, clustering, backups, archival mechanisms, we ensure that the data is always available. Integrity in information technology is achieved with hashing techniques, and confidentiality is achieved with encryption techniques. There's another term called as non-repudiation. We'll talk about it one by one. Let's start with encryption. Encryption is of two kinds, asymmetric and symmetric. I'm not sure if we spoke about it on day one, but uh, I recollect, yeah, we did speak about it. Asymmetric is where asymmetric, two M's there, yeah, two M's, yeah. The asymmetric is where you are using two keys. One is a private key and a public key. But in symmetric encryption, you're using just one key. That's all, right? So you have a private key and a public key. Now this is also called as a key pair. And that's what the EC2 instances use to authenticate you on the EC2 instance. Whereas symmetric key just uses one single key. And it is a known fact that symmetric encryption is faster than asymmetric encryption because I'm not using a key pair or key handshake mechanism. I'm just using one single key pair here, and hence it is faster. But asymmetric encryption takes time but is more secure. Because here, if this key is compromised, you're losing your data. Here in this case, if your private key is compromised, you also got to compromise the public key, which is kind of difficult. I'm not saying impossible, but difficult considering that the number of days and years it will take to compromise a private key. Integrity is achieved with hashing techniques. So if I'm sending certain data and I'm saying that, hey, I'm sending ABC in an email to you, this ABC will have a hash number. A hash is a combination of it's an alphanumeric string that is generated. So at the source, the string is generated, and when ABC travels all the way through the wire to the destination, the string is generated one more time with the hashing algorithm. Let's say MD5, although that's a very old mechanism for hashing. Today we are using SHA-1, which is much secure, and it takes more time to recompute the hash. So let's say we are using MD5 as an algorithm to hash a value called as ABC. I'm generating certain number, and I'm going to just put some random string there. At the destination, the MD5 algorithm is used to regenerate the hash of this, and I'm going to get the exact same value. Let's actually prove it. So I'm going to go to a website, just say MD5 calculator or something, and let's pick up just any random website, onlinemd5.com, and I'll pick up some file. It has generated an alphanumeric number using MD5 algorithm. Using SHA-1, it's going to be a different number. Using SHA-256, it's going to be a longer number. So at the source, you're generating the hash value. At the destination, you'll also generate the hash value. And if these hash values are same, that means that this value called ABC hasn't been modified. If the hash values are different, then that means that ABC is modified in the middle, or some man-in-the-middle attack happened. And that's what hashing does. Non-repudiation is a judiciary term, more related to the law, court of law. It means that if I do something, I cannot deny the fact that I did it, because there's a camera watching me, because there are people who are there as witnesses. In information technology, the non-repudiation term is used in a similar way. It's just that when I restart the machine, I cannot deny the fact that I restarted it because there are events written in the event viewer that I restarted the machine. So my IP address will be there, my name will be there, at what time I restarted, and the activity will be written to the event viewer. So that's non-repudiation. So it's paramount that you maintain the confidentiality of data, use techniques like encryption to maintain it. Integrity of data, use techniques like hashing to maintain integrity. Use availability, ensure availability by ensuring that you got load balancer techniques. Use Route 53 to move the data or put that in different modes like priority mode, weighted mode, round robin mode, etc. And and then also use or take backups to ensure that the recovery time objective and recovery point objective are minimal. And then you also archive the data for long-term retention purposes. I will also have content delivery networks in place, CDNs, which is provided by a service called as CloudFront. Now, CloudFront is a service that will help you cache your content to the nearest geographical location. So if I have my website located somewhere in the east coast of the United States, and I'm accessing the same website somewhere from the Middle East, of course, the distance is so large from Middle East all the way up to East Coast that the number of hops that it will take for the round trip will be more, and hence the latency to access the application will be more. So as an application developer or the infrastructure custodian of the infrastructure, you will have your web application hosted in the nearest geographical location to the user. So you will build certain edge locations where I will have my content cached at the nearest delivery location, which are called as content delivery networks. So most frequently accessed content will be cached in the CDNs, so the users get the least latency, which is also part of the availability. So we digressed a little bit because I was specifically focusing on the encryption aspect of it, and for this you need keys. To encrypt the data at rest, you need keys. To encrypt the data in transit, you need keys or certificates. And that can be generated by or by just purchasing the certificates, either from a third-party provider like OpenSSL or Semantic or VeriSign. There are several providers today. But you can also create the certificate or the key just by going to IAM console, clicking on encryption keys, and then using the keys here. And these keys created using key management service can then be used to encrypt your database, your S3 bucket, your EC2 instance, and every other thing that we have in AWS that needs encryption. It's just listed here. EBS, which is Elastic Block Storage, S3, Redshift, RDS. I'm just saying anything can be encrypted using these keys that you create. So if I click on Get Started Now, you get an option. So try the new KMS console. Okay. Click on Create Key. What is the name of the key? So you got to follow this wizard in order to create a key, and this key can then be used to encrypt the services that I just listed. All right. Alias of the key is, let's say I want to use it for EC2 protection. And do you want this to be created using KMS, which is Key Management Services, or you want to use an external entity? You can import a symmetric 256-bit key. So like I was saying that you can purchase the certificates from any of these entities. If you have done that already and you don't want to pay Amazon, then you can use this external thing and import it from there. I'll choose KMS and click Next. You can add tags. And then who will be the key administrators? The key administrators can manage this key. When I say manage, they can rotate the key just in case the key is ever compromised. Then these administrators can disable the key and then do the investigations. They can set the expiry date of the key. At this time, I'll just select one user in random and say Next. Who will have permissions to manage the key? So these guys can use this key to encrypt and decrypt the keys. I'll select the same user again. And then I have a JSON policy that is letting this user called Joe create a key, list the keys, enable list, revoke as well, just in case it's ever compromised, disable it if the job is done, delete, etc. All of these activities can be done. So clicking on finish, and I have a key created. And this key can then be used to further encrypt my S3 bucket. Let's actually go there. I'll go to EC2 and S3, and looks like probably I have a bucket here. Yeah, we've got a bucket. And under management, properties, yeah, properties, default encryption. It is not encrypted by default, but I can use either Amazon managed keys or use the keys in my KMS. You see that? So this key will then be used to encrypt my S3 bucket or the objects in my S3 bucket, right? And similarly, you can use the same key to encrypt RDS or Redshift or an EC2 instance. So that's how you're protecting the data at rest. Any questions on this? There's a key rotation. So you can rotate this key every year. Any questions, team, on the keys part of it? I'm just scheduling a deletion. It cannot be deleted directly. So I have to wait for 7 days to get that deleted. So it will get deleted. Okay. Thank you. So let's move forward to the next section. So we learned the IAM section, cross-account access. In IAM, we also learned about the KMS, key management services, to create the keys and encrypt an S3 bucket using that key. Traditionally, this thing was pretty difficult to do. When I say difficult, it's not the technical difficulty, but the amount of infrastructure somebody has to build to create that KMS key was humongous. You had to build something like a certificate authority, right? Certificate authority, you will go ahead and specifically talking about Windows, you need a Windows 2008 R2 Enterprise Edition, yeah, and you will need at least 2 of them for clustering purposes. And then you install certificate authority inside that, create keys inside it, and then you will have another subordinate CA that will also have the same version of operating system, then create, and then these keys will then flow from the root CA to the subordinate CA, maintaining them, patching them. This is all such a difficult job. And then Enterprise Edition is not cheap. It's pretty expensive thing, and they charge per CPU. So setting this up and maintaining them was a big headache, and KMS in AWS has made life much easier here. Should we move on to the next topic in the agenda?
Do you want to do a short break?
Okay, yeah. Let's take a 10-minute break. It's about 8:20 now. Let's come back by 8:30. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, team. Let's get started with the next topic, which is the billing section. Let's understand the various aspects of billing and how you can set up billing alerts in the AWS console. I'm currently logged in as a root account in the AWS console, and you can see the billing by going to your name right here. Click on your subscription, and then under billing, Gotta click on My Billing Dashboard, which will take you to the various options you have under billing. On the left hand side, you will see the bills, the cost explorer, budgets, reports, and all that good stuff. This account is fairly new. It was just created like yesterday, only for to demonstrate the cross account access. So there's not much that you will see. So I will sign out from here and sign into another subscription that is fairly old, and that's where we'll see the actual numbers and certain graphs and pictures is something you can see there. So I will log into, oops, okay, I messed up. Okay, sign into a different account, that next, and that next. Alright, I've set up MFA for this, so you gotta pull up the Google Authenticator, look at the code, which is that. Okay. Okay, so this is a fairly old account, and then I go to my billing dashboard, and I should be able to see everything because it's not an IAM account; it's a root account. So I've got quite a lot of numbers there. Now, right on the dashboard, you will see what you gotta pay or the estimation of what you gotta pay, and the currency is something that you can definitely set up under preferences. But at this time, this is INR, which stands for Indian rupees, but then it also shows you a USD conversion. It tells you what you have been using in your AWS so far and the corresponding numbers or what you owe Amazon. Is only an prediction or an estimate of this month. You can also look at month to date spend by service by clicking on bill details, and you will see fine granular details right there. I'll go and switch to the previous month from this drop down menu. Okay, and then you'll see that um, this of course is tax invoices and payment summary that's there, whether it was paid or not, and then the amount of money that I'm paying for each service. If you click on EC2, it will further tell you more details as to in which region are you actually running your instances. I think the most of these are running in Ohio. So if you expand that, it will again tell you what exactly in EC2 are you gotta pay for. I ran a network load balancer for 1 hour, for which I got no billing, but a NAT gateway was created, which is of course not under free tier, and the amount of money that they are charging for the NAT gateway per hour is right there. The total number of hours is 28, and 28 multiplied by that may be 1.26. Um, I'm creating a T2 micro instance, and then you charge like that amount, and then it was up and running for 316 hours. And if you scroll down, it's gonna tell you each one of them in detail. Similarly, there's a fee for the KMS service as well. If you create the keys, looks like there was a key that was created in North Virginia region. There's a $1 per KMS created key. Um, and then what else you got? Route 53. I created 3 zones, and there's a 50 cents charge per zone. Since I got 3 zones, it is 1.5 for the 3 hosted zones. And yeah, that's all. So there's a tax of about $10 there. So it gives you very detailed and granular level. So if you ever think that you have been charged extra, you can come here and see if you have been charged as per your realistic numbers. There's a cost to the data transfer as well. So certain amount of data that is transferred is of course free, but thereafter you will be charged. So it is that amount 0 per GB, and I've used only 0.225 GB, which is not coming under the billing section at all. So I've used very minimal level of data transfer. But if I start uploading a lot of content to my S3 bucket, do a lot of input output transactions on my EC2 bucket via the load balancer, you'll definitely see some numbers right there. right? So this is for this month, but you can definitely filter using this drop down menu to see what happened in the previous months. This is good for financial audit purposes, right? Okay. What else do we have here? Under Cost Explorer, you can launch the Cost Explorer to visualize your spend on AWS. You can create reports to identify your monthly spend by the service. How much are you spending monthly for an EC2 instance or an S3? So it can be grouped by service or by an account, or daily spends, which have the historical numbers for up to 60 days. You can also set up budgets by clicking on the budget section there. You can create and manage budgets and say that if your um, expected amount of money, let's say $100, or the total resource consumption goes beyond $80, you get an alert. Of course, alerting is done in a different section in CloudWatch, but you can manage the budgets and say that you should not go beyond a certain number. You can also add notification from this section. So let's do that actually. Cost budget, where you can monitor your costs against specific number. You can just put the budgeted amount of money, and the periodical values can be set up. Do you want it quarterly, annually, or monthly? People usually go monthly values here, and then if it goes beyond $100 in this case, you get an alert provided you have notification set up in the next section, right? Um, so if I gotta give it a name actually, monthly, and then click alerts. So you will get an alert if the budgeted amount goes beyond $100, sent based on actual costs or the forecasted costs. You can see the forecasted costs on the dashboard itself. So depending on what you have spent this month, you will get certain forecasted costs as well. And it tells you this is what your next month's bill will be. And an email contact can be specified, or you can have a notification sent through SNS, which is a simple notification service. So that's part of the budgeting. Finance team is usually looking out for reports. Usually we have given access to or IAM access to the finance team, so they can then create their own reports using this section. Analyze your cost using the Cost Explorer. Monitor your reserved instances. Well, what's a reserved instance? There are three kinds of, maybe four kinds of instances that you can create. Um, One is on-demand instance. On-demand instance. On-demand instance is something that we have created all these days. That means whenever you create it, just by going through the console, when you click on launch instance, that is nothing but an on-demand instance. Next one is spot instance. Spot instances are directly mapped with bidding. So you can go ahead and bid for instances. And let's say if the cost of running an EC2 M3 large instance is 0.5 an hour, then you can bid for it and say, hey, I really don't want to pay 0.5. I will pay only 0.225. And if Amazon has capacity in that region, in that availability zone, they will give it to you. But keep in mind that this instance that is spinning out of the bidding is valid only for 6 hours. So people mostly do it for auto scaling purposes. Next one is a reserved instance. If you forecast your application and you think that you will have this workloads up and running for a very long duration of time, that is between 1 to 3 years, right? Then you can reserve an instance. There is approximately a 40% delta, 40% discount between the cost that you pay for on-demand instance versus the reserved instance, right? So if you're paying $1 for on-demand instance, you'll be paying like 60 cents for reserved instance. And over a period of time in 3 years, that really multiplies, and that's a significant discount for the subscriptions that will be running workloads for a long time. And the last one is dedicated instances. As the name itself says, that dedicated is a real physical box that will be provisioned for you. Is of course more expensive than reserved, spot, or on demand. On these dedicated instances, you can have an operating system and an application running, or you can have virtual machines or instances running on top of the dedicated instance. There are two ways you can use your dedicated instance. Remember that when you create on-demand instance, they come under the category of multi-tenancy. People from the virtualization background and Citrix background know what multi-tenancy is, but if you are creating virtual machines on a hardware, the virtual machine sitting right next to your virtual machine does not belong to you. It is totally isolated and you have no control on that virtual machine, is multi-tenancy. So you will have multiple tenants or multiple instances sitting on the same hardware. Dedicated instances work a little bit differently. It's not multi-tenant, but everything just belongs to you. So you can control the resource usage at a hardware level if you're using a dedicated instance. So you can now pull up the report from here and monitor your reserved instance utilization, because you pay for first 3 years. Let's say just pay for all 3 years upfront, and maybe after 6 months you do not need so much, so you can always shut it down. So your resource utilization can increase by the amount of time that is shut down. For example, the first 6 months it's up and running, 100% of utilization of the resource is done. But after 6 months you have shut it down for 1 month, right? So what you actually get, since you have done an upfront payment of 3 years, and then you're not utilizing the resources for 1 month, you get 3 years and 1 month there. So it moves ahead, and that this kind of utilization can be monitored using the reports available here. An entire AWS resource usage report can be generated from this option there. We also spoke about tagging in one of the sections when you're creating an EC2 instance, that you create a tag, something like this. A tag has a key and a value pair. So the key name is let's say it's a web server. Who's the owner? Owner is Joe. What's the owner's email? Owner's email is joe@company.com. Team is app team. Patching cycle weekly or monthly, right? DR owner, disaster recovery owner, is Steve, because he belongs to the DR team, the backups team. So what I'm creating is a key value pair and tagging my instances or S3 buckets or databases or anything of that sort. Over a period of time, when you have a lot of instances or resources in your infrastructure, you can filter the resources and say how many of these instances belong to Joe, or how many of these instances are owned by a team called as app team. So by tagging them appropriately, you can filter them, pull up the resources, and then charge them back using cost allocation tags, right? Payment methods, where you'll have your credit card set up there. Payment history tells you how many times you have paid, what has been paid. Your invoices can be downloaded for taxation purposes. Consolidated billing is when you will have multiple organizations. In one of the labs, what we did was we used two subscriptions, totally two isolated subscriptions, called dev, and we call it as subscription A, and another one called as production, called as subscription B. And then you may have multiple subscriptions like that, subscription 1, subscription 2, 3, 4, 4, multiple teams, right? You can have the billing consolidated for all of them only if you consolidate and put them under one single org. So these subscriptions will then be billed and charged back from the main organization. So you have to link the accounts. Let's say we got all 12 of us working in a project, and then here all 12 of us have different subscriptions. We can link all of those accounts by just going to your organization, like that. All right, so my organization is that. I can add an account like that, invite an account, and then I can put your email address here, right? Let's just say anything, probably alpha, alpha, beta, gamma at hotmail.com or something. Yeah. So let's just imagine that this is a subscription, and I can put this subscription under my account. Of course, this has to be validated because the owner of this subscription will then get an email, and this has to be validated by the other side, and this will then get activated. Once this is activated, I will have all of them sitting under a simple org. I can have policies attached to the org. So the policies are nothing but permissions as to what people can do. So organizing accounts can be done. It can put under umbrella like this. We're just putting under one umbrella. So all of these subscription will have their billing consolidated under one single org where chargeback can be done to these respective subscription based on the tags and based on the subscription. Under preferences, you will say how you want to receive invoices in email by turning on this feature. Disable credit sharing between the subscriptions if you got shared accounts. Reserved instance discount sharing can also be done if you got multiple subscriptions there. Receive free tier usage alerts. So if you are exceeding or approaching the free tier limits, what's the free tier limit? So if I go to aws.amazon.com/free, there's a documentation, a web-based documentation which tells us what's allowed here, right? So looks like we're getting quite a lot of free things here. AWS well-architected tool, you can use it for free, unlimited, but then light sale can be used 750 hours in a month. Work docs and workspaces only usage limit is 50 gigs. So like this, you will have limits for every subscription, and if you're exceeding that, you may want to get alert, which you have to specify here. So if you specify your email address there like that, I'll just put my email address. I'll start receiving emails every time I try to or I exceed unknowingly or approach the usage limit. Billing alerts is important as well, and it must be done if you'd like to get an alert if you're exceeding your budgets or exceeding the billing alert specified there, or receiving billing alerts. I'll click on save there, and all your billing reports can definitely be saved to an S3 bucket. Usually finance team will then have access to it. So the finance team has access to this whole billing console plus the S3 bucket where the bills are being saved. I will save it, and then manage billing alerts will take me to the CloudWatch section where I can set up alerts. And every time my bill exceeds certain amount of money, I can have an email triggered, and that's under the billing. So CloudWatch can help you monitor the charges on AWS bill by sending you email alerts if you exceed a certain threshold. The first 10 alarms are free. So billing alarm, exceeding certain number, send a notification to an email address like that. Okay. How do you want to treat this as? Treat this as missing data or bad, or you just want to ignore it, or is it good? So just a way to tag your email. Just create alarm. So every time I exceed $70, I'll be getting an email. Of course, I need to confirm it from my email because you just don't want to spam anyone's email address there. So I'm just logging into my email address from my phone quickly, and then click on the link that I received. after subscribing to the billing alerts. Okay, right, confirm subscription. I just clicked on that hyperlink. There's not much there. You just get a link in your email where you have to confirm. So as soon as it gets confirmed, it will automatically um, get itself ticked, and you can then view an alarm like that. It currently has insufficient information because estimated charges are beyond what I have in my billing number. So as soon as I reach 70, it will then turn to OK or a green. And any questions about billing? There's another thing here called as tag. Go ahead, please. I think someone unmuted. Okay. So I'll switch to Ohio region because I've got two instances there, so we can talk about tags and resource groups there, so we can see certain things. So I'm switching back to Ohio EC2 instance. So there's something called as tags here, and even under the EC2 instances, if you click on them, there's a tag option there where you can add multiple tags. So let's just replicate what I just made notes here. So I'll put the key value pairs, like name of the machine is a web server and owner is Joe, and team is web team, and then you can put some contact information like that. Contact information is web team at company.com. All right, so let's save it like that. And same thing can be done with this as well. Well, yeah. Then if you go into tag section, you will see all the tags that you have so far. And this is specific to EC2 instances only. You can also manage the tags. Back again, click on manage tags and you will see all the resources there. You can add tags from this section. The difference between tagging from here, from this section, and difference between this section is that you can tag all the resources in one go. So if you got about 20 virtual machines sitting there, you can select all of them and put a tag like that and say that patch cycle is monthly. So all common tags will be applicable for them. So if I go to that virtual machine, I should see a new tag there, like patch cycle, and even this guy, right? So this is a bulk tagging option. Well, this tagging can then be used in the resource groups. Resource group is nothing but grouping of resources. But before we go to resource group, let's take a look at tag editor. So you can filter all the resources regardless of their regions. If you look at this, it has moved to global and not pointing to a particular region. So using this, you can generate a report of resources which are mapped to a particular tag. Let's say I want to query Ohio region, North Virginia region, and maybe Singapore region because that's where my workloads are, let's say. And the resource types, are they EC2 instances or images? What are they? You can just filter them from this drop down menu. So I can say EC2 instances. All right, you can add multiple resources like that. And here I can specify and say, show me all the machines or owner. Do I have an owner? Yeah, which has the owner of, you can put any value there. Show me all the resources, specifically EC2 instances in this region who has Joe as the owner. Find resources. Well, this is just the only one instance we have so far. So you can download that in the form of a CSV file, and it just appears like that, along with the tags. So we can then charge them back and tell him that, hey Joe, you got the following instances up and running, and these are your resources. So you got to patch them, etc. So any notification can be sent to this person. On the other side, if you go to resource groups, you can effectively use tags from resource groups as well. Let's go ahead and create a group, a resource group. A tagging or a resource group can be created based on tags or based on a CloudFormation template. Let's do it based on the tag format. And then a resource group is nothing but a nothing but a group of resources. So that ways you can patch them together. So all the 5 virtual machines which are there in that resource group can be patched, can be restarted together, or maybe just want to run a startup script on it, push a signature or antivirus on it together. So automation can be done on all those resources that are there in that resource group. So go to the tag based section, select the resource type. Say I want just the EC2 instances with the following tag. So anything that has the tag with the name Joe, key value pair, right? Give it a group name, Joe's Infra. And give an optional description and then create group. So I'm expecting that all the resources that are there inside this, which has the tag of name and a Joe, should be populated right here, which does not. Let's see why. So I'm going to flip to the EC2 section, go to Ohio, it's already there. Okay. The thing is that this in the back end, it's all operates as a JSON and it is case sensitive. So I'm looking to see if it name has N uppercase and J in J uppercase. Name Joe. So that's why it did not populate. It has a owner Joe and not name. So I need to fix this. Owner equals Joe. So I'll go back here and modify this by clicking on edit and then getting rid of that and type owner as Joe. Gotta be cautious here because it is case sensitive, and then save for changes. Let's see if that works for me. There you go. So it has identified the resources with the following tag, and that's that. Now what is it that you can do with this? Well, these are the actions that you can take. Patch them, run a particular command on all the resources with that tag, automate them. When I say automate, what exactly it is? There's an execute automation button here as well. This and this, it's the same thing. So if I click on that, well, these are the various things that can be done. You can terminate all the EC2 instances or stop an EC2 instance, or is there a restart somewhere? There's a stop, start, restart an EC2 instance. Let's actually do this. So if I click on that, it will take me to something called as system management. Yeah, it's there in the system management console. Where is it? Right here. I'm in the system management, execute automation. Right. So here I do not see the instance ID. So if I move this like that and then say show all the instances, I've got 2 of them. So I select that guy and say execute. There must be a rate control. Okay. Where's the rate control option? Okay, I just want to do it on one target. Stop after the tasks. It's also looking for a parameter name. Rather just do a simple execution there. Okay. Execute. So this machine is getting restarted. It's in progress, but let's view it. I'll refresh the screen to see if there you go. I think this guy is getting restarted. It's stopping. It will stop and then start again. So the fundamentals of creating the resource group is to do a bulk activity, and tags and resource group function together to group the resources in your subscription, and can be in multiple subscription as well if you have them under the same organization. Any questions on tagging, resource groups, and billing? Okay, so let's spend the remaining time on the last section, which we said. Hopefully, you're following the agenda there. Yep, tagging, resource groups, system manager. And the last section is migrating workloads to AWS. So with your permission, should we go ahead, move forward, talk about the meat of AWS here, which I think some of us are looking forward for this as per the discussion we had yesterday. Okay. So it got restarted as well, which is good. In continuation to this discussion on migration, that is a topic now. So developers and architects like you and me look forward to build new applications in the cloud, regardless of what cloud it is. We plan to build new applications in the cloud and can design the components, processes, and workflows for their solution. We employ APIs of the cloud of the choice and leverage the latest cloud-based best practices for design, development, testing, and deployment. In choosing to deploy their solutions in cloud-based infrastructure like AWS, the developers can take advantage, or even the architects can take advantage of the instant scalability and elasticity, isolated processes, reduced operational effort, and several good things that we can talk about cloud. We can take advantage of all of that. At the same time, many businesses are looking for better ways to utilize their existing infrastructure or migrate their existing application to a cloud-based infrastructure so that they too can enjoy the same advantages seen with any application development. One of the key differentiators of AWS infrastructure services is its flexibility. So it gives businesses the freedom of choice to choose the programming models or languages, the operating systems that they want, databases probably they are already familiar with, or if they have any advanced databases in cloud, there's a seamless integration that can be done. As a result, many organizations are moving their existing applications to the cloud today. What we truly call our infrastructure in AWS, or sorry, on your premise, is it's actually called as an asset. People from ITIL background will know that asset is a configuration item, and we maintain those assets in a CMDB, which is a configuration management database. So these IT assets are deployed in the company data centers. And in today's world, it is making more sense for the business to move to the cloud. And if not move, they may have some hybrid computing going on. So those assets can continue to stay in place. However, we strongly believe that there are several assets within the organizations that can be moved to the cloud today with very less effort. We intend to discuss this step-by-step, phase-driven approach that will help you identify ideal projects for migration, build the necessary support within the organization, and migrate applications with confidence. It's important to understand that with any migration, whether related to cloud or not, it involves one-time costs as well as there is a resistance to change among the staff members. And this resistance could be cultural or socio-political impedance will be there from the teams. There are costs and different factors that are outside the scope of the discussion, because we are looking at more technical aspects. We may not be focusing on the costs or different political factors or cultural factors here, but it's important to take those into considerations as well. And if you have to take them into consideration, so we'll start by communicating with them, start training them, telling them the need or today's need to move to the cloud, and also let them know that it's important to focus on a long-term ROI as well as tangible and intangible factors of moving to the cloud, and be aware of the latest developments in the cloud so you can take full advantage of it. Right? So there are different um, areas of information technology that we use today. It could be databases or S3s or virtual machines. Regardless of what technology you have on your premise, it's important to use a phased strategy for migration. And one of the key things that I even discussed yesterday was a cloud assessment that must be done. So this is, let's call it as a cloud assessment phase. What do you assess here? Well, you assess the costs. You also identify the assets that can be moved. What is their architecture? And what level of security does the assets have? So in the cloud assessment phase, it not only goes through these things. So first thing is the cost, where the total cost of ownership, which is given by a financial assessment. You also need to know um, security and compliance assessment, right? A technical assessment is required. You also need to identify the tools that can be reused and the tools that needs to be built. Can I migrate the licensed product? How many of them are open source and how many of them are proprietary licensed products? Create a plan. And of course, we also need to measure the success of the plan. So what we will eventually have is a business case for migration. And once this migration or one-time investment is complete, you will have a lower total cost of ownership, faster time to market your application, and higher flexibility. And all the good words we always praise cloud about. It's also important to identify the gaps, and you will be able to identify the gaps once you have all the assessments in place. So identify the gaps in your current traditional legacy architecture, between legacy architecture and the next generation cloud architecture. We need to know the gaps as well. The second phase The second phase is doing a proof of concept. Get your tests done, get your feet wet with AWS, build a pilot and validate the technology, test existing software in the cloud, and that will actually give you a lot of confidence with various AWS services. And this will mitigate the risk by validating critical pieces of your proposed architecture. Once you have done the proof of concept, you have certain infrastructure in place, you move on to a third phase, which is phase 3, and I'm calling it as data migration phase, which is where you move your data. Understand the different storage options, like what? Block storage, object storage, S3, elastic block storage, EBS, EFS, Glacier, and the different storage classes available inside S3 is something that we must know. So we migrate your file servers to S3. You migrate your commercial RDBMS or RDS to EC2. You can move it to EC2 elastic block storage, or just go to platform as a service. You can migrate to RDS. If you're running, let's say, MySQL on your premise or Oracle on your premise, they can just go and sit on RDS. But you need to know whether your database should go and sit on a platform as a service or infrastructure as a service like EC2. Phase 4. So you have moved your data. We now move the apps. There's an application migration phase, right? There's an application migration phase. You can forklift. You can just use a forklift migration strategy or a hybrid migration strategy, but make sure that your apps are cloud aware. You can also create AMIs for each component. And during this phase, you will future proof. That means you will have enough scalability. So scaled out service oriented architecture must be built around your application so that they can horizontally scale. Scaling out and scaling in must be built into your applications, and if required, you must have the ability to vertically scale as well. And then the fifth phase is leveraging the cloud. In fact, various features like security, elasticity, and other things which are outside the scope of cloud, which is software development lifecycle, must also be built. Monitoring, creating dashboards, and leveraging availability zones for high availability of your applications gets into the phase 5. So this is where you are taking the maximum advantage of the features that cloud provides today. So in phase 5, you are reducing the capital expenditure, reducing the gap that's there between on-premise and cloud that was identified in phase 1. Automation is also done in this phase, because now you have learned a lot in phase 3 and phase 4, you have started implementing the infrastructure in phase 2 manually, migrated in phase 3, migrated the apps as well. It's time to automate. So if you ever have to rebuild the infrastructure ever, you can use infrastructure as a code or a JSON to rebuild the entire infrastructure with the click of a script or your button. Now you're getting into phase 6, where you have matured infrastructure in AWS. You're looking at other things like performance optimization, improving efficiency, reducing latency, not just monitoring, but using advanced monitoring techniques, using third-party monitoring techniques as well. And probably in this phase, you may also want to re-engineer your application so that it is cloud aware and understands the way cloud works. So here you're increasing the utilization and transforming your traditional infrastructure to a cloud aware infrastructure. So now you start getting better visibility of your infra in cloud using advanced monitoring and telemetry techniques. There are certain organizations that skip some of the phases or just get rid of some of the phases. They may also just skip it because they may want to do migration and data migration and proof of concept together. They may want to do data migration and application migration together because the application demands it, right? It cannot be done in different phases at some time. So they merge it or completely get rid of it. Any questions on this one so far? So the economics of your entire migration are done in phase 1, where you're trying to find the total cost of ownership, server hardware, network hardware, the cost of monitoring the hardware, the software operating system licenses, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, data center costs, administrative and storage bandwidth related costs, and of course the cost of 24/7 support. That all gets in the phase 1, where you're trying to develop a methodology to reduce the total cost of ownership and then comparing it with an EC2 cost calculator that uses that industry data.
Yeah, one thing that we found is most clients don't think about network utilization, which is a very big factor when you move to the cloud versus on-prem.
That is a really big number. Actually, what you pay is per year, and I actually saw one of those invoices. I think I said that yesterday probably, that number was just too big per year, and if you're going to the cloud, it just cuts down exponentially. I agree with you. Yeah. Some of the other questions that you may want to ask the stakeholders is, which business application should move to the cloud first? And if that is going first, does the cloud provider um, providing the necessary building blocks for that app? And if they are, then can we reuse our existing resource, or rather say configuration management tools? And how can we cut down the costs by getting rid of support contracts? That's a lot of money that we pay for support contracts with Novell or Oracle or Microsoft is massive money. And I'm not just talking about hardware and operating system and databases, but also hardware with Dell, IBM, softwares, and your ISPs, networks, Cisco, Barracuda, etc. We also need to have entity relationship that tells me um, a dependency tree or a classification tree. And we clearly know that the web application is dependent on databases. The web application is also dependent on the load balancer. For authentication, you need Active Directory. For email systems, you need Exchange. For monitoring, you will need SCOM or System Center Operations Manager. In a Microsoft world, if you're patching, you need SCCM. There's a lot of dependency. And if we are able to create a relationship between the entities, that really helps me because I just cannot move the application as is because there are other dependencies that needs to go along with it. I cannot just move my web application because the database also needs to be moved. If I move my database, how about monitoring? Monitoring also needs to be set up somehow. You may use a third-party monitoring like Nagios or use a CloudWatch monitoring tool. It doesn't matter, but we need to have some kind of monitoring in place. How about authentication? So we need to have the whole package or a whole suite of applications move to the cloud than using or than just moving one. So how will we know that? We'll know that by creating an entity relationship between the assets. Are we able to map the current architecture of the application to the cloud architecture? Does it really fit in there? Can we repackage? Can your application be packaged into a virtual machine? Can we get it into a platform as a service? Is your company licensed to move your third party softwares used in the candidate's application in the cloud? How much effort is required to move it? And then sometimes the organizations don't want to move certain applications. So should it actually stay in the on premise? Maybe because of the regulation and compliance reasons, we want it and it must be in the premise. And which one of them can go to the cloud? There are certain applications that use specific authentication mechanisms. Does the cloud support it? So there are a lot of tools that we can reuse in AWS. So let's make a quick list of the tools that can be reused. So it's important to research and analyze your existing IT assets. Identify the tools that you can reuse in the cloud without any modification. A simple example is SCCM, System Center Configuration Manager. Can I get rid of the SCCM licenses? Now, SCCM is a tool that's used for several things, including operating system deployment, patching, reporting, compliance, several things. Can I just get rid of those licenses by moving to the cloud? Is there something in AWS that will fix it? There's a resource manager or management tool or resource grouping. So in the cloud, you deal with abstract resources. For example, AMIs, EC2 instances, S3 bucket, EBS. They're totally disparate resources. So you're likely to need tools to manage and put them in a single entity or single unit, which is nothing but a resource group. Then you can have configuration tools as well. Configuration tools, like if you ever want to automate resources, there are third-party tools as well as AWS tools like Chef, Puppet, Ansible, that will let you automate the infrastructure in the cloud, and that will let you automate the configuration process. And there are system management tools. So after you deploy your resources or services, you might need to modify your existing system management tools so that you can effectively monitor them, deploy them, and watch the applications in the cloud. So you always need to have one eye on the monitoring aspect of CloudWatch specifically. So there's monitoring on the CloudWatch, there is flow logs, there is SNS for notifications, and definitely you can have integration tools, use various SDKs or AWS toolkits to do the integration seamlessly with other providers. Licensing. Can I migrate licensed products? So when you do a deal with Microsoft or Oracle, you say that, okay, I've got about 200 databases running on Oracle, and Oracle gives you a deal and says that, okay, the regular cost is about maybe a lot of money, and then we'll give you 40% discount on a lot of money because you got like 200 databases running, which is a lot, and they are in cluster. So here's a discount, and you pay upfront all of that money to Oracle. But now you think about moving to the cloud. Whom are you going to pay? Amazon or Oracle? You already paid. The whole money is gone out of your pocket as part of your capital expenditure. But once you spin up an Oracle instance in AWS, you gotta pay AWS for the compute usage, which is the CPU and memory of the database. Plus, you also pay Oracle. Plus, you also pay AWS for the Oracle licenses. So, well, you can definitely bring your own license. So, if you got license agreement with Oracle, you can bring your own license. Yeah. So, Amazon has teamed up with different providers who have permitted the use of their product on EC2. So the EC2 based license is mostly friction-free path to move your software into the cloud, because you really don't have to do any pay any capital amount of money, initial investments to Amazon. You just pay as you go. So you purchase the license the traditional way, or use your existing license and apply it to the product which is available as a pre-configured Amazon image. For example, Oracle, Sybase, Adobe, MySQL, Microsoft. All of them have made their software and support available in AWS Cloud using bring your own license options. And if you don't find your software that you are looking into AWS, then you talk to your software vendor and let them make their software available in the cloud. I'm referring specifically to a point where you can launch instances from the marketplace like that. There are thousands and thousands of providers who have uploaded their Amazon machine images here, and you can either go as pay as you go mode or bring your own license. Let's see if we let's say if I type Splunk. I want to install Splunk for my resources, so let's see what I get. Okay, Splunk Enterprise. I can bring your own license. Yeah, if I have an agreement with Splunk, I can bring that license. Plus, I of course need to pay the compute fee to AWS. So if I select it, it's gonna tell me the cost. So how much you pay Amazon for spinning up an Splunk instance. You don't pay anything to the software because you're bringing your own license. But this image, which is a Splunk Enterprise image, has this Splunk installed, necessary binaries installed. It's all there. Step-by-step instructions. Yeah, so you just pay Amazon for the compute. That's all, because it's bring your own license. But there are others as well which will let you use it based on per hour. licenses based on per hour. Let's say Visual Studio. I want to use Microsoft Visual Studio. Yeah, so secured Visual Studio Enterprise 2015. I'm gonna pay about 49 cents an hour. If I select it, so there's a cost for the software and there is a cost for the compute, which is CPU and memory, two separate costs. And this is not bring your own license. This is pay as you go license. So in the licensing mode, you need to know if you have any subscriptions with your existing software vendors and whether you want to bring your own license or go for a utility mode pricing model, which is nothing but pay as you go. In the second phase of this migration, where you're doing the proof of concept, you should be clearly be aware about the services that AWS has, and that will help you migrate your on-premise workloads to the cloud, specifically Amazon S3, EC2, and RDS. These are the most utilized features in AWS as on today, apart from IAM and CloudWatch. Security features like multi-factor authentication, identity and access management are also important. You build a proof of concept of that. So you also need to know about the terminologies like AMIs, volume, snapshots, compute, databases, security, etc. Anything anybody wants to add or has questions on this discussion? Okay. So hybrid migration strategy. So what's a hybrid migration strategy? It's just about taking some parts of your application and moving them to the cloud while leaving other parts of the application in place where they belong to. So hybrid migration strategy can be a low risk approach to the migration of your application to the cloud. So rather than moving the entire app at once, there are parts that can be moved and optimized one at a time. That will reduce the risk of unexpected behavior after migration and is ideal for large systems that involve several applications. For example, if you have a web application and there are several things that are running on the web app, like search, indexing, that actually powers the website, you can consider using that approach, specifically hybrid migration strategy approach in that case, where you have such complex designs. People use various features like auto scaling service, CloudFront service to reduce the latency for the users. So the edge locations will cache the static objects which are closer to the customer and reduce the latency. So this is often so easy to do that customers don't wait until this phase, the last phase, to take advantage of the CloudFront. They do it much earlier in the phase. And people use elasticity, Amazon machine images, and they also do server hardening or security hardening of the infrastructure in AWS by safeguarding your credentials, protecting your access keys and secret keys, rotate the keys if you suspect a breach, leverage multi-factor authentication, restrict the users to AWS resources. So you continuously revisit and monitor your IAM user policies, prevent your data, also protect your data by encrypting the data at rest and in transit. Encryption of data at rest is done with AES encryption algorithm, whereas the data in transit is encrypted with SSL, secure sockets layer. You also develop a recovery strategy. For example, taking periodic backups or taking periodic snapshots using elastic block storage. And if you have a relational database, you take a backup and snapshot of that as well. It's also important to test your backups before you need them. So you'll have periodic test recovery done, or a drill done on the backups to see if they are actually working or if they are corrupted. We may also want to have a dashboard of all the applications to see which ones and how much are we using. And finally, when you start looking at optimization phase, which is the last one, you will then see how I can further cut down on the costs. Because optimization is not just focused on performance, but how can you further cut down on your costs? How can you improve the efficiency and reduce wastage of your deployment footprint? Do I have necessary cloud aware system administration tools required to maintain my apps? I will have the necessary applications like CloudWatch or other third party tools like Nagios or Prometheus to understand the usage patterns of my resources in the cloud. We really do not have to master the art of capacity planning, because here you have elasticity as a power to you. You can understand, monitor, and examine the load patterns. You can manage this load using elastic environment more effectively. You can be proactive if you understand your traffic patterns. For example, if your customer facing website deployed in AWS infrastructure does not expect any traffic from certain part of the world in certain time of the day, you can scale down your infrastructure in that AWS region for that time, and you automatically optimize on the costs. You also need to know what resources are underutilized, and anything that's underutilized, you'll just go ahead and terminate them. You'll know that by inspecting the system logs and access logs periodically to understand the usage and lifecycle patterns of the EC2 instance. Anything that's idle for over a couple of hours, you just terminate your idle instances. And there's a service from AWS actually that will tell you about the usage patterns, and that's called as Trusted Advisor. So if you look in the screen, I just clicked on the Trusted Advisor section, which tells me how do I optimize the cost, performance, security, etc., etc. But not everything is free inside this, because some of them just say question mark. This is free. EBS public snapshot, which checks the permission setting. There you go. Now it is done. Yeah. This is red. That means it really needs my attention. There's a problem with this. Security group specific ports unrestricted. It tells me that there are a couple of security groups which are open to the world, which is not good. I have 169 security groups, out of which 85 have 0000/0. Which ones are they? Well, you can just click on this download button. It downloads an Excel file, and you get a nice, neat report about the security groups which have 0000. And then you can just go ahead and revisit them, look at them, and if required, you go ahead and modify it. Yeah. Looks like this one, this one, this one. All of these are just open to the world to access my data. Then limits, VPC. Checks the usage which is more than 80% of the VPC limit. There's a limit to the number of resources you can create in AWS by default. In every region, I'm just giving an example here. Every region, you cannot exceed more than 20 T2 micro instances. You cannot have more than 5 VPCs. Cannot have more than 200 subnets in a region. Cannot have more than 2,000 security groups in a region. And that's a number that is predefined. But it's not a hard block. It's a soft rule, which can of course be modified by getting into this section of your EC2, where you can create a ticket and say, hey, I need more than 20 T2 micro EC2 instances, and that's under the limit section here. So at this point, the total number of on-demand A12X large instances that I can create with this subscription is 5. If you want more than that, just click on this button, request limit raise, and it will take you to the support ticket. And as you scroll down, you will notice that there are limits for every thing like that. Yeah, host limits, VPC limits, EBS, they're being categorized, but these are not hard limits, they're soft limits. Can anybody think why do we even have limits here? Why did we even get this in place? Why is it even required to have limits there?
To prevent DDoS attack.
Yeah, prevent an attack. It doesn't necessarily prevent an attack. It's not reactive or proactive in nature. It's just that when somebody does resource exhaustion because of some reason, DDoS is one good example there, then I will have more resources being spun up because I have that in auto scaling group. And if my CPU goes above a certain number in auto scaling, like 80% or something, new machines are automatically created. And if that goes for a longer time, I will have hundreds of instances being spun up in a very short time. To prevent that, you got limits in place. Second, automation is the key in today's world. People write scripts to build infrastructure unlike what we used to do in traditional world. So if there is a small bug in your own script, where you said, hey, build 10 instances, and then you put the 0 extra there, it will spin up 100 instances. So to prevent any human errors, you got the limits again. Now, these are two main reasons why you have it. Well, monitoring again, we were looking at the various phases here. Yeah. So monitoring is done at the CloudWatch level, where you also get responses on your email or HTTP using simple notification services. You can track your AWS usage and logs using AWS usage bills, and look at your cloud front access logs periodically. Use CloudTrail to audit. And like I said in the last phase, you also re-engineer your application, and then you think about, can you package and deploy your application into an AMI so that when you want it, you can rebuild the whole app without installing it? Can you run multiple instances of the application on just one instance if needed? So, yeah. So these are different phases of migration that people usually look at when when they have to go face to face with a customer and discuss about those strategies. Any questions? Should we move forward? Okay. AWS has developed something called as, just save this file so I don't use it. AWS has developed a cloud adoption framework. We also call it as CAF, or just an acronym there, CAF, AWS CAF. Now, AWS CAF helps organizations understand how cloud adoption transforms the way they work. Assessing migration readiness across various technical areas helps you determine the most effective approach to an enterprise cloud migration effort. So CAF is organized in various 6 areas, what they call as business, then people, governance, platform, security, and operations. So the CAF framework or cloud adoption framework is divided into 6 areas. It gives a model to establish areas of focusing in determining readiness to migrate and creating a set of migration execution workloads. And these are the key areas of the businesses impacted by cloud adoption. It's important that we create a migration plan ourselves, which considers and incorporates the necessary requirements across each of those areas. In businesses, in this section on the top, the businesses will support the capabilities to optimize business value with cloud adoption. And the common roles which are in that segment are business managers, finance managers, budget owners, key strategy stakeholders. In the people section, the roles that are human resources, HR, staffing, and people managers are the common roles. In the governance, you've got CIOs, program managers, enterprise architects, business analytics, portfolio managers. They are getting under the governance part of it. In the platform, it is the people who develop, maintain, and optimize cloud platform solutions and the services, like IT managers, solutions architects, CTOs, the chief technology officers. They are under the platform category. Security is the people who design and allows the workloads developed and deployed in the client in the cloud to align the organization's security control, resiliency, and compliance requirements. People like CISO, IT security managers, IT security analysts, head of audit, and head of compliance, they are under the security block. Finally, the operations team was responsible to maintain the health of the systems and reliability and delivers an agile cloud computing operation. And the people are IT operations managers and IT support managers. Of course, there are other things like cultural issues that are at the root of many failed business transformations, and yet most organizations do not assign explicit responsibility for culture. Culture is critical to cloud migration. Cloud adoption can just fail to reach maximum potential if companies do not consider the impact to culture, people, and processes. So in addition to technology, we need to focus on the culture of an organization. On-premise infrastructure has been historically managed by people like you and me. And even with advancements in server virtualization, most companies have not been able to implement the levels of automation that the cloud can provide today. AWS platform provides customers instant access to infrastructure and application services through pay-as-you-go model. You can automate resources quickly through APIs. And as a result, all the roles that I just specified, the respective responsibility within your organization is bound to change as the application team will take more control of their infrastructure and application services. The impact of culture on cloud and cloud on culture does not need to be a fearsome or a daunting proposition. So we should just be aware and intentional about the cultural changes you're looking to drive and manage the people side of the change, measure and track the cultural change, just as you would like to do with the technological changes. Migration strategies. Is everybody okay? You got any questions? Team? Okay, we got Abhishek, Amit, Amod, Deepak, Neftali, Oscar, Paul, Puneet, Rohit, Satish. Any questions, guys? So now we are
Still good.
okay. Thank you.
No questions.
Moving on to the strategies, which I think most of us, being from the technical background, you're looking for this. Migration strategies. So this is where you start to develop a migration strategy. Consider this is where the cloud journey actually fits into the organization's larger business goals and strategies, and find opportunities for alignment of the vision of the business. Migration strategies typically depends on, again, 6 is a good number. There are 6 R's. Typically, if you're looking for any kind of migration, you begin with an application on the lowest complexity end of the spectrum to allow for quick win, to build the team's confidence, and to provide a learning experience. You also want to choose an application that has business impact. The complexity of migrating existing application varies depending on the considerations such as architecture, existing license agreements, business requirements. For example, migrating a virtualized service-oriented architecture is at the low complexity end of the spectrum. A monolithic mainframes is at the high complexity end of the spectrum. So let's look at the 6 R's. The 6 R's are re-hosting, re-platform. I'll not use the word re again and again. Say refactor, or just say re-architect. I'm writing it again. Repurchase, retire, retain. How many are there? 6, yeah. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the methods for categorizing what is your environment, what the interdependencies are, technical complexities to migrate, and how you will go about migrating each application or set of applications. So using these 6 R's, like replatform, re-architect, you will be able to migrate and decide in a better way, it will be an informed decision. So using this knowledge, you will outline a migration plan of each of the applications in your portfolio. And this plan will be iterated and it will mature as you progress through the migration. That will build the confidence, you learn new capabilities, and better understand your existing estate of infrastructure. What is rehosting or rehost? We used this term yesterday called as lift and shift. Rehosting is lift and shift. Move applications without any changes is lift and shift. In large scale legacy migrations, organizations are looking to move quickly to move business to meet the business objectives. The majority of these applications are rehosted. GE Oil and Gas, it's a company, found that even without implementing any cloud optimizations, it could save roughly 30% of its cost by rehosting. So most rehosting can be automated with tools like AWS. Let's make a list of these tools. AWS, VM, export, import, or I think it's called as import export tool. So some customers prefer to do this manually as they learn how to apply their legacy systems to the new cloud platform. Applications are easier to optimize, easier to re-architect once they are already running in the cloud. Partly because your organizations will have developed the skills to do so, and partly because the hard part, which is migrating the application data and traffic, has already been done. Re-platform. This is referred to as lift and shift, but between that you got a tinker. So hence it is called as lift tinker shift. So you make a few cloud optimizations to achieve a tangible benefit. You will not change the core architecture of the application. For example, reduce the amount of time you spend managing database instances by migrating to database as a service, like relational databases, or migrating your application to a fully managed platform like Elastic Beanstalk. A large media company, Netflix, migrated hundreds of their web servers that it ran on-premise to AWS. In this process, it also moved from a WebLogic kind of an environment, which is a Java application container that requires an expensive license. They moved from there to an Apache Tomcat, which is an open source environment. By migrating to AWS, Netflix saved millions of dollars in licensing costs and increased savings as well as agility. Re-platform. So you find a new platform in the cloud, migrating from on-premise infrastructure to something which is platform as a service. Refactor or re-architect. Reimagine how the application is architected. So you go ahead and think about how it was done on your premise, how it was developed using old tools, and can I use cloud native features? What is a cloud native feature? Cloud native, for example, Docker, Kubernetes, Lambda. Basically, wherever you do not have any servers, also called as serverless designs or serverless architectures. Moving from that, is refactoring or re-architecting. So you can migrate from monolithic architectures to serverless architecture to boost the agility and improve the business continuity. This strategy tends to be the most expensive, but it can also be the most beneficial if you have a good product market fit. Repurchase. Move from perpetual licenses to a software as a service model. For example, moving from a CRM, customer relationship management, to Salesforce. Moving from on-prem, what's that called, ServiceNow, to cloud-based ServiceNow is repurchase. Today, the HR system is on Workday. You move from HR systems, on-premise HR systems, to Workday. You move from content management systems to Drupal, right? That's repurchase. And then retire, retire. You go ahead and remove the apps that are just sitting and eating up on your electricity and heating costs. Remove those apps that are no longer needed, and you'll get that only through assessment. And once you have completed the discovery of the environment, you need to ask who owns each application. Gartner, according to Gartner, they say 10 to 20% of enterprise IT portfolio is no longer useful and can be turned off. And these savings can boost your business case, direct your team's attention to the applications people use, and reduce the number of applications you have to secure and patch and update. Retain is also referred as revisit. Well, you keep the applications that are critical for the business, but that require major refactoring before they can be migrated. So you look at your apps, what's there on your on-premise, and then you probably may have to do a major refactor. For example, rebuilding application that was on .NET 3.5, and then you rebuild the whole thing with .NET 4.0 or 4.5. So you revisit all the applications that fall in this category at later point in time. Out of this, which migration strategy is right for me? Choosing the right migration strategy depends on your business drivers for cloud adoption, as well as the time considerations, business and financial constraints, and resource requirements. So out of these, refactoring or re-architecting is more time and cost effective. Yeah, these 6 R's. Refactoring and re-architecting is the most time taking and cost as well, but at the same time it gives you a lot of opportunity to optimize your application. The ones that will take the least time is retire, of course. Yeah. Any questions on this one, team? So Amazon's CAF, like I said earlier, CAF is a migration readiness tool, cloud adoption framework. So I say Amazon CAF. Is it? It should be, yeah. Cloud Adoption Framework. Okay. So Amazon tries to push people towards it because it doesn't come free. Yeah, there's a white paper attached to everything you have. To create a CAF action plan. So using the CAF framework, it lets you decide your cloud migration readiness. And each perspective of the AWS CAF provides ways of looking at your environment, like these business perspective, people perspective, governance, etc., etc. So within the AWS Management Console, you got few of these components like S3 is definitely used for storing the data, and that is the first point of contact for several or hosting your data. So moving your snapshots, it all goes through S3. Moving RDS, it goes to S3. Moving on-premise, NoSQL data also goes to the S3. And from there on, it is imported to various places. Then under migration section, you got various items like that. For example, Migration Hub, Application Discovery Service, Database Migration Service, Server Migration Service, Transfer for SFTP, Snowball device, and Data Sync. These are certain utilities or service offerings that Amazon gives to migrate your data from databases for database migration services, from a file server using AWS Transfer for SFTP, but this happens on internet. But if you'd like this to happen over the road, then Amazon will send you a Snowball device, which is I think in two flavors. One is 50 gigs and another one is 80 gigs, and they is it gigs or TB? I think it's TB. Let's see. Let's go check. Import into S3. Yeah, okay. Fill up the name. One day shipping. It should be TB because GB is nothing. I'll quickly verify that. AWS Snowball size limit 50 terabytes. 50 and 80 TB. Yeah, so it comes in two flavors: 50 TB and 80 TB. 50 is I think for Asia Pacific regions, you got just 50 TB, but in United States, it comes with two flavors. For rest of the regions, you got 80 TB, but United States, you got both of them, 50 and 80. But if this is just too small, you think 50 terabytes is not enough, then you go ahead and ask for a Snow Mobile, which then they will just go ahead and send a truck. I gotta put AWS in front of it. AWS Snow Mobile. So that's literally the truck that they will send to you. And you just gotta plug into your data center, transfer all the data from your data center to this truck, and this truck is driven to the nearest AWS data centers. They then just dump the whole thing in your S3 bucket. So this will just go like up to petabytes of data. Then what else? Cancel this. So yesterday I was referring to a service called as SMS, which is simple migration service or server migration services. And you got to have some kind of an intermediary server between your on-premise and the cloud. And that can be either in the form of a VMware ESX environment or a Hyper-V environment. So you download this templates, create a VM that will then act as intermediary server to stream the data from your on-premise data centers to the cloud. For databases, people usually go through simple export of the data and dump into S3, and Amazon has got good documentation there as to how you can import the data from S3 to SQL, Oracle, Postgres, or anything of that sort. You can also import to DynamoDB if you need it. So you can import to SQL or NoSQL. But At times, the organizations have complex schema, and that's when the database migration service comes into picture. So DMS is a service offering from Amazon that will let you migrate even if you got complex schema sitting on your databases, and it's constantly being updated, new issues being reported by various people like you and me. And there's one tool here which is SCT, which is schema configuration tool. Let's see, schema conversion tool, not C is conversion. So it will let you convert the schema from on-premise to something that is cloud aware, right? So you got to download it on respective platforms, run it, import the schema into it, and then it will convert to something that cloud can understand. So they're giving good tools there. Yeah, create migration strategy, source database, target database, and then it replicates. And once the database is replicated, you just decide when to cut off the tool, cut off this replication. Day 3 is uploaded. I will pause for a minute to take any questions, any specific questions you have on this. That way we just keep it interactive. Let's open up the forum to everybody. No questions? So yesterday, some of us had questions on migration. Was I able to address them in this today's session?
Yes, Anand. And this is the nice session. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will go ahead and save this in the migration notes. We started with various phases of migration and then looked into what's there in the each phase, what questions we must ask, tools that can be reused, about CAF, which is the Cloud Adoption Framework, and the 6 points that the CAF focuses on, the roles and responsibilities in each one of them, and migration strategies that has 6 R's that can help us maybe pick up one or more methods used in the migration strategies. With that, we conclude the session for today. Tomorrow we'll come back and do cloud formation. There are a few more things. Let me pick up the agenda. AWS. What's that called? AWS? Advanced AWS. Advanced AWS. Architecture. Architecting. Okay. Okay. There you go. Advanced 3 days training. Okay. Oh yeah. So first thing that we'll look at is cloud formation, and then we have to go through this AWS well architected framework. We looked at multiple AWS accounts in your organization today. Connecting, yeah, done. Billing is done. Moving large data. So this is about the various tools, and the migration strategies comes under that. This also comes under that, which is specifically Snowball and Snowmobile. Understand different architectural designs. Well, this is just too big. It's called as CDP, Cloud Design Patterns. So if I just go and Google for cloud design patterns, there are actually two Japanese people who are walking on the roads of Seattle, and they sat down. It was like Friday night, and they wanted to just hang around because it's too too tired. And then what happens when two technical people sit and talk? They talk technology, right? So that's what happened with these guys as well. So they started making design patterns. Am I in the right? No, I'm looking for Cloud design patterns, architectural software, AWS. Where's the story on the Wikipedia? Software design pattern, architectural patterns. Can I put Japanese there? Probably. Service oriented. Let's see what's in there. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I'll just put this link in the chat so you don't have to search and do this hard work. Yeah, there's quite a lot of design patterns. Unfortunately, we don't have the names of people. Yeah, it's called as Ninja of Three. It's called as Ninja of Three, who share their expertise and experience in building cloud solutions. Let's go further and find out who these ninjas are. Yeah, let's quickly read this. Three men who devote their waking hours to spread the word about cloud technologies gathered in a Japanese-style tavern in Seattle. That's where AWS was born, and they made all of that. So this is like a good story. And they made all of these design patterns, right from a single disk architecture to multiple disks, and deploying it in multiple platforms, a worldwide architecture for the different kinds of patterns which are there in these hyperlinks. So I would not say, hey, go ahead through all of them, but probably you can go through one a day, like basic patterns on day one, basic, and patterns for high availability on day two. In fact, let's look at this multi-server pattern. What's that? Server redundancy. Yeah, how are you solving the problem? Explanation, implementation, and a good picture. A simple diagram. It really need not be complex, but it can definitely auto scale. And remember that this is just a framework. And what I would do to make it geographically available, I'm saying geographically available because load balancer is mapped to a particular region. So if the whole region goes down, even if I have 20 instances in three different availability zones, the whole thing goes down, right? So to make it geographically available, I will have another copy of it in a different region. Let's say this is in the East Coast and another one in the West Coast, and connect both of them with Route 53. People with Azure Knowledge Traffic Manager, right? That's what we do with Traffic Manager as well. And here in AWS, we do with Route 53 and put them in priority mode. So the traffic, once it gets into the Route 53, it will send it here. And if it is not reachable, it goes to the other one, which is in the West Coast. So yeah, it's a small thing, but just the framework subject to further iterations. Protect your infrastructure against DOS. So we did that with AWS Shield, AWS Shield Standard and Advanced, and WAF, which is Web Application Firewall. You understand encryption because we looked at that in KMS. You can create the keys and use that key to encrypt the data at rest, specifically S3, EC2, and RDS. And that's that. Enhance the performance of your solution, select the most deployment. So in today's discussion, when we spoke about migrations, we did have this topic: how do you select the exact AWS deployment mechanism? Which one of the R's will you select from the CWF framework? Yeah. Okay. So tomorrow we'll come back and look at AWS well-architected framework, which has 6 pillars, earlier 5 pillars. I have a presentation on that already, and I'll put that in the Google Drive in a similar location. Day 3 is uploaded already. Day 4 will be uploaded by, let's say, in a few hours, and I'll also have the notes uploaded there.
Can you
Hopefully,
make sure that day two and day 3 is not deleted? I mean, I not downloaded them.
if you see the screen, I've got 15 GB or 15 GB used. So please go ahead and download. I think that download doesn't take much time, right? Just click on download. That's it. I've used everything, mate. There's not much I can do. I need your help.
Anand, the day 3 notes are not updated.
Yeah, I'll just do that. Probably it's somewhere sitting on my desktop. So see, all of these are notes. All I gotta do is just drag and drop. Yeah, I'll
And
do that.
one small request, if you just take a few lines like blockchain,
Okay.
about the blockchain, what is exactly its blockchain and what is the use of this?
Blockchain is chain of blocks. So let's put it this way. Now that you know hashing, we spoke about hashing a little bit, and look at that. The block is ready for us. So I'll put some data inside it, right? And if I ever have to modify this data, I should not be allowed to modify this data, right? That's how it should be. If I ever have to modify this data, I should not be allowed to modify this data. But there are several reasons why it should be allowed to do that. What I will do is go ahead and create another block and put that new underscore data here. And this data is like, let's say my bank statement or the number. So whenever I go to my ATM to withdraw some money, I'll look at the balance. I see, okay, I've got some number there. When I withdraw the money, I get a different number. So my numbers are being updated constantly in a month, depending on how many transactions happen. And that creates a ledger. Over a month, I start getting a ledger, and every transaction is connected. Now here, use this analogy to understand blockchain, where I'm looking at every transaction as a block and the series of transactions as a blockchain. The blockchain then becomes a ledger or a statement or a bank statement. Now here, my data is connected like that. My data, oh, what's going on? Yeah, my data is connected to every block. Can I use a different color? Yeah. And then I've got another data. So after using ATM for the third time, uh, we're using ATM for the third time. I got new underscore data underscore 2 or something. And this block then gets linked to the third block. You may ask me, hey, why do I need to link? Because every block has certain hash value. Every block has certain hash value. So in this block, I will have its hash value here. Hash, it doesn't look like it's as is hash value. So it knows who its previous block is, and this guy knows its hash value, right? So this hash values are creating the chain. So block 3 knows block 2's hash value, block 2 knows block 1's hash value. At any point in time, the attacker tries to modify this data, the hash value is changed. So it then becomes hash value underscore something. Yeah. As soon as it happens, the chain is broken because this block has nothing to look at. It does not have any reference. And inside this blocks, I can have insurance information, healthcare information, banking information, which is compliant to PCI DSS, IoT information, just anything, stock market information. So the whole ledger does not get corrupted because one block is corrupted. So if I have to summarize blockchain, that's what it is. Does that answer? Does it give you an idea?
So the data will be reside on that location, but it's only changing the hash value, right?
Yes. It's mapping the hash value to the previous block.
Exactly. It's kind of a security mechanism we are going to use, or
Yeah. It
there
is.
are a lot of.
This is primarily to prevent the integrity loss or data integrity loss. So what you are doing is creating the blocks, and hashing is directly related to integrity of data. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So today was, I think, a long session. We started with IAM. There were some goof ups happened there, and it was my Firefox was actively caching a lot of things. So this is okay. And then we switched the browser to do the labs. I launched the IE, and there we experienced good things. We were successfully able to do the proof of concept for cross account subscriptions, so cross account access. We learned about billing, alarms, and billing alerts. Looked at the various options inside billing as well: tagging, tag editor or tag manager, resource group, system manager, automation using resource groups, or automation using system manager, and then various theoretical stuff inside migrating workloads to AWS, and what features AWS has as on today that will help the engineers do the right migration. Like I said, it's more about people, that's you, me, technology that AWS gives, but the processes is something that we spoke about. With that, we conclude the session for today. Unless you have any questions, I'll be here for another 5 minutes, maybe more if you need me. But if you'd like to drop off, you can. Thank you for your time and patience listening to me. You have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.